Today's video is an extension of the conversation on the 22nd of July. We spoke about, if you remember, the state pension age being reviewed, being brought forward by 4 years. They should have next reviewed it in 2029, but they're reviewing it right now. We spoke in that video about the reasons behind this decision. We spoke about the state pension, how it's funded currently from the tax take. We spoke about the triple lock being one of the core elements that means that when you look at the numbers and the spend for the state pension, it becomes wholly unsustainable, especially given the fact that we are projected to have less people working to be able to pay those who are in retirement based on the way that the state pension is funded. You tag on to that the fact that for the first time in a very, very long time, we've seen death rates exceed birth rates. Well, we're in a bit of a pickle. And by the way, I've not even mentioned the economy and the state that the country's in right now. So last week, there was this article published by the Telegram. Telegram, yep. And it says here millions are set to lose on up to £18,000 from pension form reviews. Now, quite a, I would say, troubling, triggering, upsetting headline. So in this video, I just don't want to focus on the bad news. I do want to talk about who's going to be impacted and why. But more importantly, I want to focus on the things that we can control, the things that we can do to try and fix this. Now, before we get into any of this, I think we just need to caveat this conversation, right? I'm a firm believer in controlling the controllables. There is no point in losing sleep, being pissed off at what the government may or may not do. This is a review. I think that it is almost inevitable either for them to increase the state pension age or find some other form to release the pressure of an unaffordable state pension in decades to come. And that could at some point mean cutting the triple lock, which all of the political parties have currently, at this point in time, committed to. But I say that to say this: we can be annoyed all we want, but we have to think about the things that we can do to mitigate the impact of this. Now, me personally, whilst news sometimes is really, really negative, I honestly believe that this stuff is put out in the media just to gauge public response, to see if there's any public response, backlash whatsoever to a suggested policy. I think we've seen this a lot with the ISA conversation. And I also think that, yes, whilst some of it is very politically driven, you have to read between the lines. And reading between the lines, I think they're going to do something we have no control. So what can you do? That's what we're going to talk about towards the end of the video. So please make sure that you stick around. Let's get into the article though, see what the reasoning is. So the government is exploring whether to raise the state pension age to 68 more quickly. It is currently set to be phased in from 2044. But Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, is considering bringing this forward 5 years to 2039 as part of the government's pensions review. So effectively what they're saying here is where the state pension age was supposed to increase to 68 in 2024, they're going to keep the state pension age at 68, but they're going to move it forward to 2039, which means that that is going to apply a lot sooner than you would have hoped for. And again, if you are working currently heading into retirement, this is not going to be something that you are obviously going to be happy with because you spent your life paying into the system and it's your turn now and it feels like you're being penalized. I completely get that. What else does the article says? Now it says here, according to Rathbones, and Rathbones is an investment house. I've done some work with them during my career. Those age 51 could lose an entire year's worth of state pension payments if the timetable is accelerated. This will be worth £17,774, assuming today's state pension of £12,000 increases by the so-called triple lock each year. Now, the triple lock, it talks about what it is. It's the increase by the highest of inflation. Average wages are 2.5%. Meanwhile, people age 52 would miss out on 17,340, and those age 53 would lose £16,918. Now, this is the interesting part. Each of those age cohorts, 51, 52, and 53 years old, comprise 800,000 people, meaning 2.4 million people. Around that number risk missing out on significant five-figure funds or sums in retirement. Now, that's a big, big deal. 2.4 million of you potentially, if this is the case and they do introduce this, will miss out on the amounts that we've spoken about there. Now, why that age group specifically? I've kind of explained it already. It's because if it's going to be brought forward, you're the guys who are going to be impacted getting to that date in 2039 sooner. So what are the things that you can do? Now, I have been crunching the numbers, and I think the solution is fairly simple. But with that being said, I don't want to be insensitive to the fact that people are in very different situations. So you're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to work out how you best do this and whether you can make the numbers work. But the simple solution would be to increase your pension contributions now. Not next month, not 6 months' time, not next year, now, like immediately. And again, under the assumption that this is something that they bring in. If they don't bring it in, the increased amount that you've paid into your pension will have compounded over that period of time and will give you more in your pension pot anyway. This is simply just a mitigation protectionist strategy. Okay. Now, the age groups that were impacted were 51, 52, and 53. So I've been crunching the numbers. And if you assume, so all of your pensions will be invested in the stock market, global markets in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Now, let's just say you're able to get a 5% return. These are the increases that you're going to need to make to your pension contribution each month from now to mitigate that potential loss of 17,774 if you're 51, 17,340 if you're 52, and 16,980 pounds if you are currently 53. So these are the numbers. If you're 51, you would need to add an extra 74 pounds into your pension. So pay an additional 74 pounds into your pension. And this is assuming that after everything is invested, it returns a nominal 5% on average per year for the next 14 years for you because you're 51. Now, if you're 52, you're a year older, so you're going to have 13 years, not 14 years. You need to pay in £80 a month to be able to get enough compounded at 5% on average per year to wipe out this potential I'm going to call it a penalty. Now, if you're 53, you've got 12 years, you're going to have to put in £87. Now, I've done this using a compound interest calculator. I would encourage you to play around with these numbers. What they won't do is they're not going to account for any fees that might be applicable within your pension provider. So if you're in a workplace pension, the fees will be capped. But if you've got something like, I don't know, a Vanguard or a Pension B or whatever it might be, you're going to have a look at what fees you're getting on those as well. Now, I've intentionally gone for kind of like a run-of-the-mill 5% return because, to be honest, if you are invested in the markets and you're with someone who kind of understands investment management, they're good at what they do, you should be able to get a 5% return. I mean, you should be able to. I mean, the S&P 500, and again, past performance is no indication of future performance, but the S&P 500 and the like have done, on average, for the past 20 odd years, 10, 11%. So 5% I don't think is too much of a stretch, but you're going to have to do some homework around who your pension is with and their track record to be able to look back and find out whether or not they make good decisions and they are good at managing money compared to their peers. That can be an exercise. If you need help, then by all means, book a call with me and I can take you through how you actually go through this process. But those are the numbers. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is if you are in a workplace pension scheme, also worth reminding, and actually you're going to have this anyway, regardless of whether you're in a workplace pension scheme or not, but you're also going to have tax relief put into this. So if you're a 20% taxpayer, basic rate taxpayer, you're going to have tax relief at basic rate. If you're a higher rate, you're going to have tax relief at a higher rate added in. So you need to feed that into the calculations as well, because that may reduce the 74, the 80, and the £87 monthly contribution that you put in, because if by the time you get your tax relief, it might be more than that. Or you could just go, actually, you know what, I'm going to put in £74, have my tax relief on top, you've got more money going into compound over that course of the next 14, 13, or 12 years, depending on your age. So there are things that you can do here. And I think, yes, this is bad news, and it's not something that I think anybody would want to hear. But we need to control what we can control. And we can definitely control the next things and the decisions that we make to try and mitigate this. I think ultimately, I will be very, very surprised if they do not do this or increase the state pension age. They've got to do one of the two, because the alternative is they cut the triple lock. And I don't see any of the political parties right now doing that. I just don't, because they know that the triple lock means a lot to people in retirement. And look, let's be completely honest. Whose vote are they trying to win? They're trying to win the votes of you who watch the channel, who are in that voting age group. They don't want to piss you off. So cutting the triple lock, I think, would be a step too far. But increasing the state pension age or bringing it forward, well, that will be debatable and perhaps might go down with some grumbles. But at least they can say, well, we didn't cut the triple lock. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Catch you later.